Well, hello. I'm driving here on Highway 41, which somewhere between Turtle Lake and Velva, North Dakota. This is an old video, as you can see, 2019, so the world has changed quite a bit since I filmed this footage. I really haven't done much of a driving video since I dropped this footage a while back. And I'll tell you the reason why, because it relates to tonight's video and it relates to the next video. I was in the process of using this footage, and I'm just a strange person. I've got to complete things, or, it's not perfect, and then it kind of freaks me out. And I was headed into Minot, North Dakota, because that's where I was driving during this footage. And after I filmed this footage, something happened in Minot, something very unpleasant and ugly, and I just thought, I can't not address that. And I was kind of lost for a while because, I really didn't want to address it because it was so ugly. But I'm going to address it. I'll mention it obliquely in this video a little bit, but I'm going to do a video dedicated to it coming in this series. And then I don't know if we'll continue on the rest of this road trip because I spent a week in Minot for a class, and then I came home, and that's kind of a separate road trip, so I don't mind jumping to a different piece of footage. So I don't know where we'll go after this, but the important thing is I want to talk tonight about Chinua Achebe's book, Things Fall Apart. I did a book review on it. I'll put one of the few footnotes that's in this video here. But the book is quite an interesting read. So the book is written from an African perspective, and it covers kind of the period of colonization. In fact, a man has to leave his village for a while, 7 years, according to the book, and he returns, and there are missionaries there and colonizers, and everything about his village that he remembers has changed, and everything familiar has changed. The character was not sympathetic, I will emphasize that, but his situation definitely was. My book review brings really two comments to mind. One is that it reads very differently from a United Kingdom perspective compared to a U.S. perspective. The U.S. dabbled in colonization, but was also a colony. The UK was definitely a very colonizing country, and it just makes the whole thing very different between the two of us. The other comment is that we're really all Okonkwo, the main character of the book. They discuss how technology is changing things, but really so much is changing. So the specific comment reads, I've been thinking about this book a lot lately. Read it over half a lifetime ago. I kind of feel like we are all Okonkwo, and technology is the colonials coming in to convert our culture in today's world. Things have changed so much in our lifetime. Change is inevitable, but it's happening at a rate at which we can't keep up. I think a lot of us can relate to that comment. So let me start with this footage. I lived in Turtle Lake for 3 years, back in, 2003 to 2005, something like that. And when I returned to Turtle Lake, it was after a 15, 16-year absence. I was kind of surprised by all these windmills that are around, because they weren't around back then. I was kind of horrified to discover that my house that I had owned, the first home I ever owned, had been torn down. And we're about to enter Velva, North Dakota, which changed drastically during my absence. And, the old phrase is, you can't ever go home. Well, it's true. Turtle Lake isn't the town I lived in. None of this is. If I were to return to my hometown in Pennsylvania, that has definitely changed. And, I think about some of the other, older people that I know, and I'm old enough to have seen a lot of change. I think of my parents, my mother's hometown that is not anything like the town she grew up in, or my father's hometown. He used to go duck hunting where he could see the Empire State Building, and now can't even tell one town from another where he grew up. It is all very changed. I was not able to attend my grandmother's funeral, or my grandfather's, but let's not go there. But my mother brought up something from my grandmother's funeral that has stuck with me ever since. My grandmother, not to get too specific, but was born in the early part of the 20th century. We just fought the First World War when people still thought that was going to be the last one. And, she died, let's just say, in the 2000s. And what a change she lived through. She lived through people walking on the moon. She lived through the radio. She lived through electricity coming into people's houses. She lived through the telephone coming into people's houses. She lived through a lot of big changes. And, I remember when I was a kid, we would occasionally bring our computer, a Texas Instrument 99.4A, which seems so primitive now, but we would bring that up to kind of show off. And she just didn't get it. And I remember having a talk with her late in her life. She was complaining about everything is WW this and WW that, and what is that? And yeah, she didn't understand what the internet was. It was just totally outside her experience. She also had a husband who was my grandfather, who she was very much in love with. And during the Second World War, he went to basic training in the deep south of the U.S. She lived in a rural part of northeast United States and went down to see him at basic training. And one of the stories she always tells is about riding on a bus, and there was a black man who was crippled, and she helped him, and she couldn't understand why nobody else was helping him. And I'm not going to claim she was some kind of a saint, because I could get into some stories there, but I won't. But she lived through a time when, just based on skin color, two people couldn't marry, and then they were able to, thanks to the Loving versus Virginia Supreme Court decision. She lived through school desegregation. She lived through all the racial riots. And then later in life, the Stonewall riot, where sexual minorities suddenly became visible. She lived through a tremendous amount of change. I have the feeling, it hasn't really been confirmed for me, but my feeling from things she has said is that she likely grew up without electricity. I know for a fact she talks about spending some summers with some relatives who ran a resort, and one of her jobs was to empty bedpans. So apparently this resort was a place with no indoor plumbing. She lived through a lot of changes. The specific comment that I cited earlier was about technology, but really, technology has just made the change a lot more visible. But I think it's important to realize that change is continuous. When I moved to my current town, 16 years ago now, hard to believe, I moved to a town that had a full, if not amazing, main street. There was a hardware store, there was a Radio Shack, there was a stationery store, drugstore, both men's and women's clothes. There was a charity shop, there were a couple restaurants, bars, a flower. There was 2 grocery stores, a movie theater, a Ford dealer, a Chevy dealer. There's even a kind of a chain. Let's call it All right, so the first time I walked into the store, the lady behind the counter said, "I just kind of think of this as Mayberry's Walmart." So let's call it a really, 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 really small Walmart. The chain was called Duck Walls. Go back further in the town, you talk to the older people, and they'll talk about how there was a Sears store, there was a J.C. Penney, the school was full, and there's just a lot of potential. And then let's visit the main street now. It's suffered a lot of shrinkage. Some of the stores just moved off Main Street. One grocery store went out of business. The other one built a new store on the outskirts of town to make it really hard to walk to. Hardware store closed, and a new one built on the outskirts of town to make it really hard to walk to. The clothing stores closed. All of them. We do still have clothing stores on Main Street, which is kind of amazing, but not clothing that I buy because it's, women's clothing or, cowboy clothing or whatever, and not the kind of clothes that I buy. So, yeah, a lot has changed. What you're going to see maybe in this video, probably in the next one, is a lot of growth in the Velva Minot area. Other than the windmills, most of this trip between Turtle Lake and Velva has been very familiar to me. But it is going to change. Okay, so I just started reading Harper Lee's book, Go Set a Watchman. And this is kind of sort of the sequel to Harper Lee's much more famous book, To Kill a Mockingbird. This one, Scout, the little girl in To Kill a Mockingbird, returns as an adult to her hometown. And by this time, a lot of things have changed. And but yet, at the same time, the town is still very cut off, very isolated. You remember in To Kill a Mockingbird, I'm going to assume you've all read this because it's kind of a classic of American public schooling, English classes. If you're not American, it is worth reading. But anyway, in the original To Kill a Mockingbird, she talks about how, we just didn't know how poor we were. Well, this is a very isolated community in Georgia, and they just, they're cut off from the world in a lot of ways. And at that time, that was still a thing. It was still very possible to be cut off. So, I just kind of think of, as media got better, as TV got better, as people could start to see how people in other parts of the country lived and, get exposed to ideas from other parts of the country. I grew up, of course, in the 1980s. I grew up in a time when TV was a thing, radio was very common, telephone was very common, electricity and indoor plumbing were ubiquitous, and you could start knowing what was going on in other parts of the world. But let's take that a bit further and just think about what's changed just since I was a kid. My teachers never worried about us using cell phones in class. Cell phones existed when I was a kid, but, they were huge and they didn't have cameras. You couldn't hide them. You probably couldn't get service in my hometown back then. When I started teaching, that wasn't even a thing. It just suddenly, it's like overnight it became a thing that, oh yeah, I got to worry about kids using cell phones. A lot of things have changed. And you think about a town that suddenly gets internet. Suddenly the kids are exposed to new places, new people, new ideas. And yeah, I could do a rant, and I will somewhere down the road, because I got a book related to it about how so much of the social media is garbage, is literally garbage. But at the same time, now we've got kids discovering that, oh, the world isn't just like my little small town in North Dakota. It's different all over. People don't live like me. Oh, some people like people of the same gender. Oh, some people are different races. Oh, list goes on. And they start to see, all the big changes. And that's really where the title of this video comes from and where the whole topic comes from. I don't know if you've ever heard the song. He's an old hippie and he don't know what to do. Should he hang on to the old or should he grab on to the new? We're all really thrust into that if we live long enough. And yeah, day to day, you're like, well, nothing really changes. But then when I think back, I'm not that old. When I started teaching, I didn't have a computer in my room. And I look back to when I was a student. I remember that we used to wheel the Apple IIe from room to room. And only a few kids got to use it kind of as a reward. I was never one of those kids. And, that's all the school had. And, we're in the future now, baby, because we've got a computer in the school. 2022, I teach in a school where every single student has a Microsoft Surface computer. We hand them out. Yeah, the world has changed a bit. Okay, we're coming into Velva, North Dakota. I don't want to talk too much about Velva, but you're going to start seeing some changes here. Like on my left, sorry, I'm off. I'm on subject, but I have to digress here. That white building, that used to be the Cenex. Kind of a small, very cramped Cenex. Cenex is a gasoline chain here in North Dakota, among other things. But this road, wait, is there a turning lane there? Velva never had a turning lane. Yeah, we saw a lot of changes here. So this is Highway 52 now. And we're headed toward Minot. And yeah, there's the Cenex right there on your right somewhere. We might not be to it. Yeah, it's this next one. Anyway, I don't remember a turning lane on Highway 52. It's just a regular 2-lane road. What happened in the meantime? An oil boom with a bunch of people moving into the area. Changes. So to get back to my teaching experience with those laptops, well, tablet/laptop, whatever you want to call it, that my students all have. Yeah, that's made some big changes. And, we had a really big one a couple of years ago when we had the lockdown and I was suddenly teaching virtually. Yeah, I wasn't ready for that. Big changes, and I didn't like it. There's definitely a lot of things about the new world, and I love technology because I love computers. I love computer programming. I love technology, and I always have. But a lot of things have changed with that. We were having a talk, group of people today. I was talking to some people who are in their, let's say, mid to late 60s. And I actually was not the young one of the group, but I was in the younger half, let's say. The youngest person was just over 30. But they were talking about back in the 1970s when they were students at the school where I now teach. They had a big party at the dam south of town, and the party involved a whole bunch of alcohol, a lot of alcohol, and one of the people that was involved in the party got caught with a bunch of the alcohol, the empties from this party, and so they were trying to figure out who else was there, and they were talking about how, yeah, nobody squealed, we just kept it quiet, and we got out of there. And so we were talking about, what would happen if the party happened now. And we realized, yeah, some of the kids would be posting it on Snapchat or TikTok or, whatever. And, nothing would be private at all. And that's true. I remember I went to a teacher party a number of years ago. And we were out one of our teachers is married to a rancher, so it was pretty far out in the country. And, we were kind of letting go because it was the end of the year and it's all gravel roads back home. And I was kind of shocked to see that a couple of the younger teachers were taking selfies or pictures on their cell phones. Back then I didn't own one. And I just thought, oh my God, you don't want people to see this. And, I wasn't drinking because I have a thing about drinking and driving. So I do not drink if I'm going to drive. And I knew I'd have to drive home, so I didn't drink. Even if it was all gravel roads, it's just not a thing I would do. But I just thought, you don't want people to see these. But it's a different generation. And they don't think of things like that. And I'll be honest, I think about my parents. I have probably overshared in this video, and they're just going, oh, shut up, shut up, shut up. And, I actually want to do a Halloween special. I talked to them briefly over email about, maybe doing a cameo in it. And they're like, no, we're very private people. And yeah, different generation. I've got these 5,000 and some subscribers. I usually get, my Pens in Use, I get around 1,000 views a week. I got a lot of people watch me. Yeah, not my parents. That's not going to be their thing. And in their generation, this kind of contact just wasn't possible. When I was growing up, this kind of contact wasn't possible. I never would have even dreamed of something like this because it never would have occurred to me. So, changes again. So I don't want to talk about the Minot situation, but I'm going to share enough so you know why I was inspired this way. Minot had an ugly, ugly, ugly city council meeting because they flew a rainbow flag over their city hall for a couple of days. And normally your city council meetings are just dead. Nobody comes. Oh no, this one was packed. In fact, they even had to remove some people. All because of a rainbow flag. Now, if you don't know, the rainbow flag represents gay pride, and it has evolved over time to include trans pride, and I forget what all, because I live in small town North Dakota. I'm sorry, I am cut off from the world still. But it represents a lot of things that these people at the meeting were just like, oh no, we can't have this. And they were very upset over this rainbow flag, and very vocal not only in saying how upset they were, but why they were, and their feelings on the people that this flag represented. So, to think about it, just imagine, you've lived your life, you kind of do your thing, and, your son comes home and says, you know what? I got a boyfriend. And nowadays, most of us are going to be like, okay, good for you. But go back to when I was growing up, that would have been a big shock. Now, I know for a fact that I went to school with some people who were gay. I couldn't have told you back then who they were. That was a concept that barely registered on my radar. And to come out back then in high school, it would have been pure hell for those kids. I don't even have to use much imagination. I live in a small town right now in rural North Dakota. I've had students who come out as gay. Not while they're in high school. They wait till they're safely away from this place. Then they come out. Because it's not safe. Well, we could talk about that, but the topic of this video is changes. So I want to talk about the parents or grandparents or just regular people growing up and they barely knew that gay was a thing, or Well, families always have a mom and a dad. Well, except for a couple of people, they lost their dad in the war, but the mom always remarried, and they lived in a different time. So I want you to do something that might be difficult. Put yourself in the shoes of someone who really never even thought about the whole idea of two men or two women falling in love. And all of a sudden, oh, they can get married. Oh, they're running the local newspaper. Oh, they're my neighbor, or, whatever. This is a lot of change to take in. Go back further, and this sounds so foreign now because we've accepted this change. Put yourself in the shoes of somebody in the 50s or 60s that, oh, what is that white girl doing marrying that black guy? Kind of a shocking change. Wait, you don't want to go to the church you grew up in? You don't want to go to church at all? You don't believe in God? What the hell's wrong with you? Imagine that as a parent. The change can impact us in the most personal ways. Here's our kid that, we grew up in a certain church, a certain way, and now he went away to college and he's got some different viewpoints because he met some new people and was exposed to new ideas. Kind of shocking. And that is really what Chinua Achebe's book is about. It's easy to read the book and focus on the African experience, on the colonization. But it is so much more than that. We're all experiencing this. And the technology we have now, the ability to contact, the ability to get information, the ability to research. And let's just be honest, although this isn't the topic of the video, but the ability to pass false information has grown tremendously. And we're living in a different world. And I'm not saying all change is bad or good. I miss the main street of the town that I moved to. It is what it is, but I can buy online, so that kind of makes up for the loss of businesses on Main Street. But at the same time, it's uncomfortable. I would rather walk to the local clothing store than have to shop online and find a shirt or whatever. But there it is. I got to shop online or else drive all the way to flippin' Bismarck. Change is a part of life and you can't escape it. And, the big thing is, how do you deal with it? Am I comfortable with all social changes? No. I try to be open-minded. I think I'm relatively open-minded. Got a definite liberal mindset. But same time, some things I don't like. I don't like the fact that people got their cell phones. They got to do a selfie of everything or take pictures of everything and share everything they do. And just like, hey, can't something you do just be private and you just enjoy it without sharing it with the world? But apparently that's a thing people do now. I don't. There's a lot I hold back on this channel and elsewhere on my social media. And a lot of social media I just am not part of. I do not understand TikTok. I don't think I ever will. I have used texting on my cell phone, but I go months at a time without sending a text or receiving a text. It's just not a thing in my life, and I don't get it. I don't get why it's important. I don't get why my students are so addicted to the damn cell phone. I mean, is it so hard to leave the damn thing in your pocket? I will go days at a time and I don't even realize that my cell phone has run out of battery. My students carry around spare batteries because they run through their battery in a day and they need to recharge it while on the run. That's not a thing in my life. I don't get the change. So yeah, I'm one of them. I'm Okonkwo. I don't get it. Apparently I'm old. But we're all going to get old at some point. We're all going to get to that point in our lives where we're just like, I don't like this. This is different. This is too different. This is wrong. And I think that's a hard place to be. Some of these changes haven't been hard for me, like gay marriage. I was actually speaking in favor of gay marriage when I was in college. In fact, I took a class called Issues in Education in college, and one of the issues that came up was the idea of gay teachers. And I remember making the point in the class, because it was kind of a discussion class, that, does it really matter what we think of gay teachers? It's perfectly legal. And several of my classmates were very upset with me for saying that. And I just said, well, it doesn't matter. Because what law stops gay teachers from teaching? And, they shouldn't be teaching. It shouldn't be allowed. And of course, I went to a very right-wing college. But I realized that the only person who actually got what I was saying was, and the very conservative professor of the class. Because, she understood law. And a lot of my classmates clearly didn't. And, so I was very open-minded on that issue. But I can think of a lot of issues where I wasn't. And, over time, I've softened on a lot of things. Other things I said, no, I really don't like that. I don't like the whole skimpy clothing thing. But I suppose that's part of being a teacher. They say that teachers are personally conservative, socially liberal, politically liberal. Maybe that's it. Anyway, so that describes me. My lifestyle is very conservative, but yet I've got some very, very, very liberal views. And I heard a few of you just shut off right there when I said that, but it's true. So, I don't really have a message here. Well, I guess I have a message, but I don't have a destination here. I think the big thing is, how do we deal with change? Okonkwo, in the book, didn't deal with change very well. He tried to kill the change agents. And that ended badly for him because it ended in a suicide, his own suicide. I think we just have to be flexible. And sometimes we have to realize that, the way things were, the way we think things should be, is it the best? Are all changes good? Oh, no. Are all changes bad? No. And you have to take the bad with the good. Another book I've been reading lately, I finished it, is Amusing Ourselves to Death. And I think a big thing there, the author takes a pretty firm stand against TV. God knows what he'd make of the social media today. And yet, you got to take the good with the bad. I enjoy some TV. Is it everything to me? No. I worked with a teacher early in my career who was very upset about slide rules being replaced by calculators because his whole opinion was that kids didn't understand number sense. They didn't understand order of magnitude because they didn't understand slide rules. Well, that's true. At the same time, one of the good things about a calculator is it takes you away from the drudgery of calculation. And some people would say, well, that drudgery is kind of the point there, dude. And I'd say, is it? I kind of like that I don't have to do long division. I'll do it once in a while. I know how to do it. I'll do a lot of I prefer if I can do math in my head. That's kind of fun, when I'm standing in front of a classroom of kids who really can't do math in their heads. But the calculator kind of saved us from a lot of that type math. So I appreciate that about the calculator. We lost, we gained. The printed word kind of took away from the need to memorize. And yet, now we've got a record of great thoughts of people in the past and in the future. Yeah, TV is very superficial. And yet, it can also be very powerful. Where are we with that? Good and bad. So, I guess if you're looking for a message in all this, don't be afraid of change. You may not have liked some of the changes I talked about, but know that your life is going to be one continuous change. And I guess try not to be the person who absolutely hates the change and tries to stand against the change and say, no more change. This right now is perfect, and this is how it must remain forever. Try not to be a William Buckley type person. So, well, thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. We're in Minot. Bye-bye.